Hey guys, hi everyone.
Hi, Tushar. It's so nice to see you. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
No worries, no worries.
We'll just wait for a few minutes. I think people are still, in the process of joining in.
No worries. No worries.
Yeah, so guys, we'll just be starting shortly. It's also encouraged if you could, just switch on your cameras so that we can have like a very interactive sort of a fireside chat and, not have a screen full of just icons. Uh, Also, just to give you the flow, we'll be having a very open discussion about the gaming industry with Mr. Tushar, how the investments in the industry have been, how the industry itself has been performing, etc. And towards the end, for about 15 to 20 minutes, we'll open the floor for the audience so that they can, just raise their hands, unmute, and ask whatever questions they may have. Also, not restricting to that 20 minutes only. You can keep on, shooting in your questions on the chat, and we'll keep on asking them on your behalf. But you have something that you feel you want to have a very frank discussion about, I think you could wait till the end, and towards the end, a 20-minute session would be like open for all.
Yeah, sounds good. And is this being recorded by any chance? I'm just curious.
Yeah.
But
uh,
yeah, but then I would request you to keep it under closed circulation, yeah, because I tend
yeah
to see
yeah
stuff which is not palatable outside of closed groups.
yeah, understood. It
Mm,
never goes out of our
right.
ecosystem. Okay, so I think enough people are joined in. I think we can start. First of all, sir, thank you so much for joining us
This
today
is
here.
funny, sorry, yeah.
Uh,
I'm barely a senior from college. That's fine.
so, Tushar, let's just start with an introduction of yours. As Tushar rightly said, he's a senior of ours, mine, Adit's, Jason, etc. He's an alum of Shahid Sukhdev College of Business Studies. Post his graduation, he worked with the private equity group at Bain, after which he worked with Kalari, and now he's presently working with Alpha Wave Global LP. and it's awesome to have him here. Let's just dive right into the session. So the first question that I think everyone has or had at least once is why gaming as an industry is becoming so immensely popular, and especially from the point of view of a venture capitalist. Like the fundings have increased exponentially over the years. So what do you think can be attributed to, what factor can be attributed for that?
Sure. Yeah. So look, I mean, VC capital going into some place is always a lagging indicator of where we are seeing the market go, right? So the only reason why VC funding has gone up is because we are clearly seeing some secular tailwinds, which I can talk about later, which are leading to this the explosion of the market opportunity that we are seeing in the gaming ecosystem. Right? And this is not just an India phenomena, but a global phenomenon. Uh, Now, what are some of those secular tailwinds that we are seeing, right? First is that gaming is increasingly becoming more and more acceptable as a means of entertainment, and it's becoming a much closer part of our life. So I think my favorite example to give is, I'm sure you got it, Netflix, but there's something called Netflix Bandersnatch, right? The Black Mirror Bandersnatch. That is as close to a gaming element with a movie intertwined that we have ever seen in the past, right? That you pick and choose which option and then they sort of stitch a movie and play it like that. That's exactly what you would do while playing, I don't know, GTA or playing Call of Duty or playing any other game, right? That you take certain action, which opens up certain other universe bases those actions, and that keeps going on and on. So what is happening now essentially is that people are conceptualizing and thinking creatively about how they can use gaming as a tools for entertainment, immersive entertainment, and that is creating that opportunity. Additionally, what has happened over the last, I would say, 5 years is that a lot of infrastructural pieces have fallen into place. So, for example, gaming relies very heavily on micropayments, right? Something which was not freely available, I would say, even 10 years ago. So the micro infrastructure payments ecosystem has really come about. Mobile penetration, internet penetration globally has increased substantially, and even more so in India. Because of that, we are seeing this huge surge in free to play gaming. And now I would say over the last 6 months, 1 year, what we are seeing is this entire play to earn economy, right? Which is growing up with blockchain games, with NFT based games, and that has cornered, I would say, a lot of capital over the last 1 year. So that is on the game development and the studio side. However, a lot is happening on the consumption side as well. So if you see, Discord MAUs have basically gone up, I would say 3x over the last 2 years, right? And at that scale, it really matters, right? Discord is at 600 million MAUs roughly now. Similarly, Twitch has gone through its own exponential journey. Then there are multiple regional mobile streaming platforms. YouTube has started focusing a lot on gaming now. It's a separate tab there. They're spending a lot of money on it. TikTok had a lot of gaming stuff. There's dedicated short form video platforms for gaming like Powder GG, Medal GG, which have really done well. Again with half a million MAUs. No, sorry, half a billion MAUs globally. So what we are seeing is that there's obviously a lot of creative velocity on the studio and the development side, but other parts of the ecosystem are falling into place as well. So such as consumption. And as an extension of that, when you are seeing a lot more people create games and a lot more people consume games, what that requires is that for a lot of infrastructure, again, to in the back end to fall in place, right? So say if you're a game developer, how do you figure out the analytics of your game, right? How do you figure out that, oh, what part of my map is actually seeing engagement and what part is not seeing engagement? So that kind of backend infrastructure falls in place as well. On the game development side, what we are seeing is that different formats of gaming are becoming popular. It's not just like one monolith now. So I would say over the last 2 years, social gaming has become a very, very big factor where you are playing either in battle royale type formats where you are playing with a bunch of anonymous people, or you are playing with people you already know of, or you play in close settings. So that has really become big during the pandemic. And what that has done is it has created like another class, like what PUBG basically did, right? It created the entire class of mid-core gaming, which basically did not exist before. And mid-core gaming sort of got the best of the both worlds, right? That you got console-like mechanics and graphics, but at a free-to-play casual game-like setup. So I think, yeah, as technology is progressing and we are becoming more and more attuned to accepting gaming as a form of entertainment, I think it is only set to increase in the future.
Understood, sir. I think that was very insightful. In fact, I have one follow-up question to what you just said, and this was in fact asked by one of the audience members when they filled out the form that we floated. It says, "Do you see traditional single-player story-driven games becoming obsolete? As you mentioned, microtransactions are being emphasized upon by gaming companies. So, do you think that would lead to these companies creating more multiplayer games and leaving aside the single-player format?"
Yeah. Look, I think as a general principle, yeah, the more senses of your body, anything like sort of that how to put this, we have five senses in our body. Now, the more and more senses of your body that are engaged in a certain activity, the more engaging it becomes for you, right? So watching a video is more engaging than reading, right? Because reading is only engaging your sight, whereas watching a video is engaging your sight, your brain, as well as your ear, maybe, like, for example, from the sounds that you are hearing. So net, what I'm trying to get to is that as the medium of the content delivery mechanism keeps on becoming richer and richer, the previous format keeps on falling off, right? So from that standpoint, it is natural that you will see more and more proliferation towards these social type of games. These single player games will also have their space, but where do I see a large growth opportunity? I would potentially say in the multiplayer games, in the multiplayer social kind of games, because they also have inherent network effects, right? If I'm playing something and I want to play with my friends, it is likely that I will push them to come play with me, which is why games like sort of Among Us become very popular. Like, it's not like Among Us is a complex game to build. It's not. But it's really the network effects that the game had which made it really popular at a point in time, right? Versus an
Exactly, yes,
Angry
sir.
Birds, which is a single player game. I'm playing it at my own time, and so obviously these single player games will have a lower shelf life than these multiplayer games will.
I think that was perfectly put, sir. And matlab, just to add on to this discussion, just to take it a little bit forward from here, you talked about the different tailwinds that are, guiding the gaming sector to its new future, I would say. And one of them has been, and this is something that many people are very intrigued about, is the role of blockchain and DeFi in, building this entire ecosystem and taking it to the next level. So, for example, the recent innovations in the play to earn sector are largely based upon the concept of a decentralized base. So how do you think this goes forward in the coming years?
Look, my big bet for the future is that in 3 to 5 years from now, all games will be play to earn games. There will be no game which will be like a freemium game or like a casual game. That is what I fundamentally believe. And let me give you a few examples of how we have seen that play out, right? India's biggest gaming platform today is Dream 11, right? Which is a fantasy platform. Now, effectively, what is Dream 11? Dream 11, on Dream 11, you are playing a certain game, and to get a certain reward at the end, which is the rake that you win from the table, right? Or which is the prize pool that you get from the table. So that is the very base level conception of how the play to earn economy is transformational, right? And the fact that Dream 11 has been able to scale so rapidly in such a short period of time ahead of all types of games in India is a testament to that. Second, if you see how the gaming market has evolved over time, it was earlier, you buy a CD or you buy a console and you just put a cassette there and you play a game, right? Which was entertainment only. Then you move to the where you basically had to pay a lot of capital upfront to start enjoying the benefits of the game. So that was a much smaller, narrower market. Then came the iPhone and the entire free-to-play ecosystem, right? That you play first 5 levels for free, and then you have to buy something to progress, right? Or you can earn some things, some in-game currencies that you can then progress inside the game with. Which opened up a huge ecosystem, both because the medium, which is the mobile phone, was much more accessible than, say, the console as a medium, but also because you took away the upfront barrier of putting a capital investment in buying a CD and playing a game. So it's only natural that the free to play market was going to be so much larger than the play to one than the analog market. So, but I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, we have not seen massive innovation in the gaming industry's business model itself. Maybe like we were seeing some shoots of that with these social games, but it was an innovation in the type of game being built and not the business model itself. Um, so now the next big bet that I'm willing to take is that these play to earn games will eat away everything that we have had. Uh, so all free to play games will have to figure out their Web3 or play to earn strategy, or they will die out. Because think about the incentivization, right? From playing something for free to playing something and earning something on top, right? That just is that opens up a whole new era for you. And to give you certain examples, right? Today more people have Axie Infinity wallets in Vietnam than they have credit cards, right? So the scale at which this change is happening is actually much faster, and we don't even know about it. Um, at the same time, I also feel that gaming is going to bring hundreds of millions of people to Web3, right? Web3 and blockchain world. Like that will be their introduction to the blockchain. What that really means. Not really buying Bitcoin or buying Ethereum. It is actually going to be play to earn, which in small bite-sized ways makes them earn something, gives them certain rewards, but also introduces them to what really is happening on the Web3 side. So this is what one of my very big bets is, and that is what is reflecting in our current investment portfolio as well.
So, what do you think is, what is the bottleneck that is required to achieve this sort of a scenario?
Well, I think bottlenecks are solving. It's not like these bottlenecks are permanent bottlenecks. They are evolving super, super quick as we are seeing them change, right? So like I said, Vietnam has more Axie wallets than credit cards, right? Which is insane. Um, I think people playing Axie Infinity increased Philippines GDP by 1% last year. Uh, so it's insane. It's already happening. It's already happening. We are just not seeing that happen in India because of how the regulatory infrastructure is here. But it's already there. It's right there. It's happening. Uh, so yeah, I mean, look, it's going to be how different governments are going to react. It's obviously going to be governments which are not in the emerging world, which are going to take this up first, like we saw with even Bitcoin, right? Like El Salvador accepted it. My bet is that in this year, maybe 3 or 4 more Latin American countries are going to start accepting Bitcoin as legal tender. Argentina already in an informal way has started accepting Bitcoin as a legal tender. South Korea started accepting Terra as a legal tender. Uh, so, so I think it's going to be how the governments are going to react to it, but it's moving so quickly that I think it will very soon it will fall out of the government's hands. That the governments won't be able to do anything and they'll have to just suck it up. So there's a lot more creative velocity in this space here. I mean, it's not like everything is solved for as well. Most play to earn games today are solving for the earn aspect and not really for the play aspect. So I think the game mechanics are not very exciting at this point. But for example, Star Atlas is a good example of how you can create a AAA game with an NFT ecosystem built around. Now I think with Microsoft taking out Activision, Zynga being also taken out in a way of consolidation, Roblox is starting to do its own NFT stuff. I think a lot of these mainstream games, which already have a lot of distribution, will start building out some of these NFT layers. Like already the games that already have distribution, like Roblox, will start building out their NFT layers, and that's how they are going to accelerate the play to earn ecosystem. So I think it's only a matter of maybe months now.
Right. Thank you, Tushar, for that question. A follow-up there would be that okay, so regulatory is one roadblock that would be figured out as we keep on going forward. But what is your opinion on how gamers as an ecosystem are generally perceiving the cryptocurrency linked NFT linked games? For example, Ubisoft they came out with their AAA rated games and that had a pretty big backlash. Right? Was it because it was fundamentally not developed well enough? Because I don't understand if it was like a decentralized platform, but within the centralized ecosystem of the game itself, so that it did not have any interlinking to existing cryptocurrency exchanges? Was that an issue, or is it like it was the perfect AAA made game, like in terms of the NFT linked games, but in generally they do not, like these games are not getting that much of a positive feedback from the gaming community as a whole? So like, how do you perceive that?
Look, so I'm not sure of the specific example of the Ubisoft game, but let me answer it two ways, right? That there are two ways in which this thing doesn't work. To just flip your question, first is that if the game mechanics and the game dynamics are fundamentally not exciting enough in the long run, then these things won't work, right? Today, you go to any 10-year-old kid in a tier 1 city in India, and I'm certain that that kid is playing on Roblox. And that kid is playing on Roblox right now because it's entertaining, it's fun, and his friends hang out there, or her friends hang out there, not because they're getting some kickbacks or rewards out of it, right? So I think, like I said, the play element has to become central and more and more as a central part of the ecosystem going forward, which I feel that a lot of these existing guys will be able to do because we know that their games are proven, right? Like everyone in the world loves Call of Duty. So if you can add an NFT layer to Call of Duty, you have already de-risked 50% of your business, which is the game part, right? In fact, that's something that is a unique criticism of Axie Infinity as well, right? That Axie is not a fun game to play. People don't like to play Axie. It's give it to a kid and no one would like to play it. So it's grandmothers in Philippines who are playing Axie. Now, what Axie is trying to do is they're trying to come up with more games with more sophisticated dynamics. But yeah, I'm sure over time these things will get figured out. This is not an unsolvable problem. When you throw capital and throw lots of human creative potential behind something like this, people will figure out a way. So I think it's only a matter of time where both new games are created as well as guys who already have distribution will do it. The second part in the way it does not work is if you try and do these asset drops or airdrops without actually decentralizing the platforms or the game economies. So I think that is one thing that people have not really cracked. People coming from Web 2 to Web 3 haven't cracked right now, which is that for them decentralization is is something that they have to pay lip service to, but not really pay a lot of attention to. So I'm sure, like, if you guys might have seen the NFT drop that Chingari did with Salman Khan, right? Like that was a eye wash, if not a scam, if I were to put it like very mildly, right? Like, I mean, what is the, like, you can't call yourself decentralized and then hold all the gates to all the keys, right? All the keys to all the gates and say, oh, I will increase the supply when I want to, I will decrease the supply when I want to, I will maintain the token price in a certain way. That just does not work. So I think that is one criticism that I've seen these Web2 companies that are going to Web3, that they don't really fully immerse themselves in the ethos of decentralization, which is a big problem. Because and why are they not able to do it, right? They're not able to do it because their incentives are conflicting. So what I mean by that is that today, if you are starting a Web3 company, in your business model, you are baking in that at some point I will sell 50% of my equity to my community, which is 50% less equity for my investors and for me as a founding team, right? But if you start from a large Web3 company's perspective, it is almost impossible for them to do that, because they already are at like billions of dollars in valuation. They already have investors who have a certain expectation of what their positions are worth. So suddenly you can't go tomorrow and say, guys, by the way, I'm cutting down your position by half because I have to do a community drop, right? Like there needs to be smarter ways to figure that out. So I think some part of that is coming from there as well.
Right, makes sense. So like that also points to the fact, like legacy players, which are already established Web2 companies looking to move to Web3, so they won't have that much of an added advantage as newer companies who are building directly on Web3 would.
Yeah.
Right. Right. One question, as you mentioned, Axie, is that I came across a lot of content on the net where they're figuring out the token economics of the the SLP and the AXS coins, and there was a lot of a lot of bearish views on that, because they're looking at how the supply is. For example, for the SLP coin, I don't think the supply is limited to a large extent, because every time, say, you win a particular battle in Axie, right, you get the SLP coins, but for losing it, you don't lose any. So it's like new SLP coins are generated every time you play a battle and you win it, right? So how exactly, say, as an investor, or even as a someone who's looking to participate in the play to earn economy, how exactly do people evaluate whether or not a particular platform or a particular game would make sense, say, from an economic perspective, right? As in, to figure out if this particular, how do you figure out the token economics of a particular game, to put it as simple as that?
I mean, it's an evolving inexact science at this point, right? And at least right now, what we are doing is, when we are investing in companies, we are not investing in, say, a specific SLP coin or a specific Axie coin. We are investing in the companies itself, which means that we necessarily have to go in earlier, sooner than later, right? So because we are in the business of, like, traditionally being a venture capital investor, right? So we invest in companies early on, help them build their business and scale it up. So we are not like, you will not see us buy, say, land in Sandbox or Decentraland. Like, we won't do those at this point, partially because the economics are still evolving and you don't know which one is going to succeed or not. However, to answer the specific question around Axiar, I think what you're missing is the conversion ratios that are between SLP and the AXS. So even though the SLP keeps on increasing in terms of the supply, the conversion ratio keeps on reducing. So that's how you sort of maintain the economics of the game. However, the concern with Axie, what you suggested at a broader level, is valid, which is that the economics are very bull market economics, i.e. that you need to keep on recruiting more and more players for the economic model to make sense. And I'm sure Axie also recognizes this, which is why I would say in November of last year, they announced that they're going to rejig the economics in a big way. And on the Ronin blockchain, they're going to change the way tokens are staked, and they're going to come up with a few more games. So you have to appreciate the vantage point where Axie is coming from. And I'm not an Axie apologist or anything, but you have to appreciate the vantage point where Axie is coming from, which is that when they started out in 2017, none of this existed, right? So the business model was set in a way where, and on certain assumptions which have fundamentally been flipped today. So they have to keep on responding and keep on evolving, right? So which will happen. I'm certain that they will be able to. And if they're not, then sure, right? Like Yahoo was the most valuable internet company back in 2003, and it's nowhere anymore. So companies will fall aside. We are so early. There will be so many companies that we think that, oh, they are this is now, but probably 5 years down the line, they won't even exist, right? And that's true for large companies like potentially Coinbase, and that's true for companies like Axie. That's true for basically everyone, right? OpenSea is facing a big challenge over the last 2 weeks from looks rare, right? So and 1 month ago, everyone thought that OpenSea is invincible. So I would say that all of these things will keep on evolving, and what we have to do is keep our eyes and ears very, very close to the ground.
Exactly. Awesome, sir. So I had one question. You mentioned, this is not related to the conversation that we just ended, but something that you had mentioned earlier on. It was Microsoft's acquisition of Activision Blizzard, right? So with such a big player in the gaming sector, putting its foot into the entire Web3 system, Web3 gaming system, how do you think this pans out for new startups that are trying to, just sprout into the ecosystem? Would this be a deterrent, or do you think this might just push innovation in a different direction?
That's an interesting one. Yeah, there are a few strands to unlock here, right? Which is that the gaming industry was due for a consolidation for a long time, because the growth of the large guys was slowing down. However, the large guys had built a lot of moats in their ecosystems with the IP that they had in terms of the game titles, in terms of the merchandise, etc. And also the closed ecosystems they had created, i.e., Epic Games has its Unreal Engine, which allows anyone to create basically games of very high quality. Similarly, Epic Games has its own publishing platform, which allows them to publish platforms very quickly. So much like we see the Apple ecosystem, which is closed, which is completely a closed loop. Unity, Epic, Tencent, all of these guys had built their own closed loops now, which were in and of themselves extremely valuable, extremely successful, and had a lot of moats inside. So it was only natural. I think it has been expected on these lines for I would say for the last 12 to 18 months in the public markets, that there was a consolidation wave that was supposed to happen in this industry, which happened at the end of the cycles. And the end of the cycle in this case is the end of the free-to-play cycle with the play-to-earn coming in. So I think it's nothing which has come out of the blue for people who have been tracking gaming stocks for a long time. First, second, this consolidation or this, these large gaming guys had become so large that they had sucked out all the creative energy out of the small developers as well. So if you think about the gaming conferences that used to happen, I would say in early 2010s, right? There used to be in WGDC, which is the largest gaming conference, there used to be at least like 500 game developers there. 500 game developers and maybe like another 200, 300 game tool and dev tooling companies, right? Or SaaS companies like in gaming. Last year, there were only 12. And that's because all of these Chotu game studios and shops either got acquired or they died down because someone just came and knocked off their games. Some of these larger guys came and knocked off their games. So I think because of that, what had happened was that the creative velocity of the gaming ecosystem had been sucked down, which is why, like I said, that. And in fact, now that I think about it, over the last 3 years, whatever innovation we have seen in gaming has actually come from the East and not from the West. So PUBG is an Asian game. Free Fire is an Asian game. C Group, which has been the breakout gaming stock over the last 4-5 years, is an Indonesian group, right? I'm sure I'm missing out a few examples, but all the innovation in gaming has come out of the East and not from the West. And that is emblematic of the fact of what sucking out of creative velocity has done, right? Axie Infinity, for example, came out of the East. So what I'm excited about now is that now that we have this entire play-to-earn ecosystem opening up, everything is fair game now. Everyone is starting off from the same point, and hopefully we should see a lot more creativity come out.
Yeah, I think that was perfectly put. Especially the point about new emerging players who are driving trends coming in from the East was something that I'd never really looked at it that way. So, having mentioned that, do you think, in your personal view, do you think there is any one gaming startup in India that has the potential to be, say, the next PUBG or the next Free Fire or Axie of the sort?
Oh, if I had the answer to that question, then we would have probably invested in it so far. That's my day job. But look, yeah, I mean, it's tough to say. What I would say is that as a rule, we try and avoid investing in game studios or like single game developers, because gaming companies have a very short shelf life, right? It's a very hits and miss driven business. And so it does not really make for very good venture investments. So for example, you could have invested in Rovio, which was the developer for Angry Birds, and made some money of the Angry Birds game. But Rovio did 7 other games after that and none of them scaled, right? So it is very tough to see how you invest in some of these, right? Which is why I see more and more gaming focused funds do that, because they are themselves building a portfolio, right? So they can themselves think of this as a, I don't know, like a roll up, like a, we see Thrasio, right? For consumer brands. Could that be the Thrasio for gaming, right? Something like that. So, and which is happening, by the way, globally. Animoca Brands is a great example of that. Tencent is a great example of that. Dream11 India is a great example of that, where they're acquiring a bunch of these games and spinning it off. So I think that will continue to happen. What I'm excited about is how the ecosystem shapes up. We have a bunch of these very cool game streaming platforms in India. So Router, for example, very recently announced a $25 million round. There's Loco, which is also doing well. There's a platform called Turnip, which is trying to build, I would say, the Discord, mobile first Discord out of India for global markets, which is super exciting. Then I'm seeing in the Web3 side, I'm seeing interesting plays come out of India, where people are learning what worked for Top Shots, what worked for Sorare, what worked for Axie Infinity, and combining those 3 things together. So we have recently taken a couple of bets in the space. One is a company called FanClash, which is building the Axie plus Top Shots plus SoRare for esports. And we have taken another one for cricket as well, which we have not announced yet. So yeah, but very excited to see which way these games are going to land. But I think it's not just the games when you think about gaming; it's the broader ecosystem that's being built out, which is fundamentally more exciting.
Definitely, sir. I think the ecosystem as a whole is what is important to consider when you're talking about the gaming industry. But having considered, having talked about the companies in India which are in this particular industry in the broad gaming sector, what do you think about the game development side of things specifically from an Indian perspective? Because historically we've seen that not many good games have come out of India. And the one good free to play game, I think it was free to play, was Raji. I don't remember the entire name. So what do you think is inhibiting such growth in India, or is it on the boom?
Yeah, I mean, there is no reason why Indian games should not or are not doing well. I would say I think Indian games have done fairly well in the casual gaming side, right? Like Ludo King is a great example. It's printing like a crore a day type in PAT. There's another company that recently got acquired called Play Simple, which has built a suite of play to earn games. Then go to platforms like Binzo or MPL, which are RNG platforms, and they are also printing cash hand over fist right now. So yeah, there's I necessarily don't buy into the thesis or the hypothesis or the statement that Indian games have not done well or Indian game developers have not done well. Uh, uh, yeah, relative to the gaming talent we have in the country, I think we have done decently well. Yeah, Zynga, the entire engineering team at Zynga at one point used to be the senior engineering team at Zynga used to be like an Indian team. Before, like I would say, up till 2 years ago, before they all sprinted out and started doing their own stuff. So yeah, I mean, there is no reason why an Indian game or Indian game developers are not doing well. They're doing okay relative to the talent we have. We just don't have enough gaming talent in India. Like there are no gaming universities or there's no gaming courses, right, in any of your IITs or stuff like that. So you're not making as many people or making as many stuff anymore. And India is fundamentally are not a very exciting market also, right? Like the ARPUs are small, TAMs are smaller relative to global markets. So anytime you see game studios also, they are all building games out of India, but they're building for the US market because that is how you optimize for LTV, right? Much like SaaS companies do. So I think it's more structural.
Understood. I think we have one question about some of the services that you said that encompass the gaming industry. That is a streaming service. So one of the audience members has asked, do you think streaming will be less lucrative to gamers in the future, given a play to earn model that is coming up?
I'm not sure if play to earn has anything to do with that. I think what will eventually end up happening is that there'll be more and more people who will end up streaming, right? So the market becomes more competitive and hence it becomes less lucrative. I don't think that there is anything that play to earn has to contribute to that. There are play to earn streamers, there are PUBG streamers that just people stream, right? Like so on the converse, you can argue that as gaming becomes more and more mainstream and more people start streaming, there'll be more monetization avenues that will open up. So I think that is another thing to think about. That will, for example, right now the way to monetize your game streams is you put your Paytm link in the YouTube video, right? Basically, that's such a crude way of doing things. If tomorrow you are able to manage your communities or do fan engagement or do sessions with your top fans, stuff like that, I think like there is a lot to be done there, which will open up the monetization potential. But yeah, from a 5-10 year perspective, I can see why game incomes will sort of first go up and then go down or flatten.
Understood, sir. All right. So one very interesting question has come up. How long do you think, in number of years, would it take for cloud gaming to become a reality in India? Also considering the fact that Jio and Airtel are, heavily investing in 5G infrastructure, but Xbox and Stadia don't find it feasible. So
Yeah, yeah,
the
no,
the,
this is, I
the
think this is a potentially a multi-billion dollar question. This is not even a million dollar question, it's a multi-billion dollar question. I think, look, Xbox and Stadia, they have done a terrible, terrible job at making cloud gaming happen in the US. So forget when it happens in India. I think I was looking at the space very, very intently up to 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and I was very excited when the Stadia announcements came about. But there has been just no development or engineering throughput behind it. I think on the contrary, the game the hardware capacities are actually there now, which I think potentially was not there 2 3 years ago. But it's just that the two players who you bet on that they will create that infrastructure, they have just done a terrible job doing that.
Understood, sir. Also, one last question before we open the floor for the audience is that this is a question that has come in. That is, I think it's a very geopolitic question. Is that how do you think that the semiconductor crisis will impact the gaming sector, not just the mobile gaming sector, but the gaming sector as a whole, and the investments in it as well?
It's
Does
already
it have
doing
any
that, yeah.
tangible
I
impact?
mean, I had to wait a year after the PS5 was launched to get my PS5. That's as big a travesty as you could have put me through over the last 2 years. I mean, COVID aside for sure. Right. So it is already happening. Semiconductor crisis is real and it's killing the gaming industry, at least the console industry, which is why we'll see more and more stuff move towards mobile and web. So yeah, it won't be as fun anymore, but then it will end up democratizing stuff because the upfront capital investment that you require behind a console versus a mobile is very different. So, and yeah, and as you see I don't know, the Bitcoin prices keep going up, more and more people putting up their mining units behind BTC and Ethereum and stuff like that, then the semiconductor industry's attention sort of shifts there. And so it's as much a geopolitical question as it is a supply constraint question.
Definitely, sir. I think that makes perfect sense. And do you think that in any way is inhibiting the VCs from, approaching this sector, or is making them slightly hesitant to, or think twice before investing in gaming?
No, I don't think that's true, because if you would see most investments that are happening, they're anyways not happening on the premise of console. They are happening on the premise of either the personal computer or they're happening on the premise of mobile, which I think are relatively insulated from these trends right now. So to answer your question, no, I don't think it's happening. It is going to stop anyone. Because for that to happen, then you have to believe that the growth of the mobile ecosystem will stop, which I think is a bet that no one is willing to take at this point, at least.
Definitely. I think that made sense. Okay, I think we are done with questions from our end, sir. Thank you so much. I think we can open the floor for the audience. So, guys, if you could just, maybe raise your hands or unmute yourself one by one and ask. Please go ahead. Or maybe even type in the chat if you're hesitant to unmute.
Yeah. No worries. For Saturday, I can imagine. Look, I mean, you can call those some of these things as fortuitous also, right? At a point in time that their game, the never-ending game, was probably not working as well, and which is why they said, okay, let's do Slack or we have something. So it's very hard to pinpoint that what came first. Did the feature come first, or did the realization that we need to move to something else came first? And a lot of these stories there could be woven post hoc also, right? So I mean, I'm not saying that it was, but it's potentially we don't know what goes behind the scenes at all, right? If you would ask any game developer what is their primary objective, their primary objective is to make a bloody successful game, not identify what internal tool could be spun out and made into a separate company altogether. So I'm sure that some of these stories we will continue to hear in the future also, and some of these things will come out. But yeah, the measure of success for a game developer is not what other tools they were able to build, right? It's really what whether the game was really successful or not. That's what they set out to do. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I mean that's how I feel. Because pivots though will continue to happen. I mean that's natural. Yeah, 100%. I mean, all successful games have very successful tribes and communities behind them, and that is what drives them. So no two ways about it. A game which does not have a community is going to have very low retention and is going to fail eventually.
Any other questions, guys? Please go ahead.
I
Hey,
think we
how's it
had
going?
this. Yeah, please go ahead. And I was just talking about that.
Oh, sorry. Hey, everyone, Ankit here. So I'm a little bit older than most people in this session, so maybe my examples might be outdated as well. So I asked a question in the chat and just bring it up again. Pokemon Go, right? So that was a really interesting phenomenon in terms of showing what AR, like the possibilities of AR. And given that a lot of gaming innovation, like you said, is happening now in the East, do you see any companies working on, what could be successful AR games, especially since the infrastructure is just so much better now in terms of like delivering an AR experience?
Yeah, look, AI has always been a curious one where it has always made sense but never really created any outcomes. I think that's been the big grouse that everyone has had with the AI, right? And which is why sort of augmented reality and virtual reality has gone through a rebranding in terms of calling itself the metaverse now. So again, I'm certain that some things will happen, but yeah, I mean, tough to predict what is going to take off when, because especially in gaming, yeah, there's just some things that come away with such a whirlwind and then they die down equally quickly. So it's tough to say where it's going to come from, but I'm certain something should happen. Maybe not in the next year, maybe in the next 5 years, but I'll be very surprised if nothing happens.
Makes sense. Thank you.
I mean, again, I know it's a very suboptimal answer to your question, but yeah.
We have another question in the chat, Tushar. It says, while we're on the topic of AR, VR gaming has been, growing as well. And what is your view on VR gaming for the next 5 odd years, considering that VR exclusive games like Half-Life 3 are also coming up, which when released, even after the release, haven't really, taken off or got that traction that the game developers would have expected.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how the Half-Life V3 is going to look like, but with VR, the problem has always been the hardware, right? The form factors are just not, they have never really been there for mass consumer adoption. So to Ankit's point, like potentially, I think AR has a much better shot at building something which is fundamentally disruptive and transformational than I would say VR has at this point. But again, with all of these games now and the large developers getting into the metaverse ecosystems, all bets are off. I don't know how it's going to happen. Metaverse is one space where I actually don't know whether there's going to be a new place being built out, or whether Facebook will build its own, will Twitter build its own, will Roblox build its own, will Fortnite build its own. Potentially the answer is that everyone will, right? So I'm still trying to find that answer. I don't have that answer myself. On which way this entire AR, VR / metaverse ecosystem is going to settle down. But yeah, I would say between AR and VR, what am I more excited about? I would potentially say AR than VR because of the hardware limitation.
Understood, sir. Also, one question that has come up in the form that we filled up is it's not a very gaming specific question, I would say.
Sure.
It's basically, in your view, what do you think is it that takes to get into the VC industry? Is it what skills or stuff like that, a skill set, or is it just intuitive to one's
Yeah,
side?
it's just a lot of luck. So yeah, I mean that's a separate conversation in and of itself. I think I've already had one of those last year. Now, what does it take to get in VC is a very different question on how to get into VC. But I mean, I can tell you how it happened for me, right? Like the way it happened for me was that I had done a bunch of internships while I was still in college in VC. So I had some network from there. And what those people had told me was that go work at a place, like at a consulting firm for a few years before, so that you build out the basic skill set required in terms of tools, in terms of, your way to analyze businesses, communication structures, etc. And once you have done that, then you should feel confident and you are ready to apply for a VC role. So that's how it happened for me. I worked at Bain for a year, BCN for a year. Then I went to Kalari for 2 years to do seed and Series A for them. And in September 2020, I moved to Alpha Wave for doing global growth stage investments for them.
Understood, sir. So I think it depends on how one builds out oneself.
Yeah.
In that
It's
direction.
really a very. I mean, I'm happy to talk to people individually if that helps. But I think at a broad base, yeah, it's a very suboptimal answer. I don't really have one.
Understood, sir. I think that was it from our end. If I think we can at most take up any one question that the audience might have. If not, I think we can wrap up the session.
I'm
So
happy
are
to
there
go
any?
for the next, say, 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So any questions that one may have?
Right, if I may, Tushar, so we at RHV as well, we tend to work with a lot of early stage collegiate startups, and we see a lot of students from our college here as well, first year, second year students. So what advice would you have for very either early stage entrepreneurs or people who are looking to get into VC or looking to start up? So what pieces of advice would you have for them?
Interesting. Yeah, I think specifically for people from CBS lacks a counterculture, right? CBS has a very proven playbook of how to get what you want out of CBS. ये दो society करो, ये पांच you do these 5 things in college, do this 1 competition, do that 2 competitions, and then sort of go work there, and then you figure out life. So I think CBS has always lacked a big counterculture, and that's primarily because we are not as diverse a batch also, right? We are like very small, 250 odd kids. When I was back in college, we were just 250 kids in the batch, and primarily from very same heterogeneous socioeconomic backgrounds, and most of the people were from Delhi itself. So because of that, people didn't really have a lot of different aspirations. So in my batch, there weren't a lot of people who were trying to become entrepreneurs right out of college. For them, it was at best like a part-time gig during college that they would just sort of, be cool and hang out about. Or it was something that was a gateway to something else, I would say. That was a gateway to put it on a resume or do something. So hence, ergo, in our college, what I'm trying to say is that risk-taking is not appreciated at all. And it is not rewarded also. So if you really want to do something, then you need to have a very high bar for pain tolerance, because it's not like the college is giving you waivers or anything, right? They're docking down your points. any which way. So my point is that take a risk and then be persistent with it. Don't and just do things for the fun of it, dude. Like, I mean, most of my batchmates that I look at from college that I still hang out with, right? Like, they are all doing things that we used to talk about that we want to do in college, and they're really happy doing those things because they gradually built up to those places, but it came from a place where they really wanted to achieve where they are. And that is what is keeping them motivated and happy. It's not ki, oh, how much do you make or where you are. It's really about what you want to do, right? So take risks, I would say, and college is the best place to take risks, because otherwise, yeah, as soon as you get out of college, life gets at you very thick and fast. You'll start working somewhere, then bonus season will come, then promotion cycle will come. So then, okay, vacation time has come. So it's very tough to take risks after that. College is the best place to take it. So be creative, try and think non-linearly, and yeah, I would say that would be my one big takeaway, because we are seeing here I'm seeing 16-year-old kids actually build very good companies now, right? So that tells you that if you think creatively, the pieces will fall in place for you. But you really have to give it a shot, which I don't think enough people from a college do. It's a nice, comfy lifestyle.
Right, that was well put. One more question on this side of, okay, so being a VC, you need to have, a perspective on a lot of industries and a lot of ideas and industries as a whole. So like, how do you go about building these narratives and building these perspectives? Like, any content recommendations that you'd like to share with people? Like, where to start reading up, any favorite book, movie, any recommendations?
Yeah, so I would say it's like in my job, it's very easy to learn if you have an open mindset. That's because I am talking to 10 companies every day who are volunteering their time and telling me what's happening in the world. Right? Passionate people who have thought through very deeply about their problems they're solving, and I get to spend time with them. So that's actually my biggest source of learning, nothing else. Then what I constantly try and do is every 2-3 months I switch sectors that I'm looking at, switch spaces that I'm looking at, so that I have the opportunity to go deep, learn something, figure out what I want to do there, and then figure out the next, then go to the next part, and then take whatever learnings I have from some other place and put it there. So honestly, for me, the biggest source of learning has always been Twitter. For the last 5 years, I learn more from Twitter than I learn from any other place. So I have almost exclusively stopped reading these non-fiction books now, because all of these non-fiction books could have been an essay. They are just a waste of time. Most of these books are a waste of time. So my reading time only goes towards either reading fiction or towards reading about history and biographies, which I personally enjoy reading a lot. So if I can give anyone one piece of advice, is that stay away from these self-help non-fiction books. They all preach the same shit in superfluous language to sell you a 300-page book of which the author makes royalties. That's literally what they do. There's nothing new that you can learn from them that you can't learn from a YouTube video or a podcast or a tweet thread or someplace else. And yeah, just have fun, dude. You should read, because reading is fun. And yeah, what Akul is saying, but yeah, sure.
Right. Slightly out of context, Akul. Right. And I think Nihal has a question, can you tell us what a day in your life looks like at AlphaWave?
Every day is the same, dude. Every day is the bloody same, which is that my half of, I would say 75% of my days goes in meeting new companies and building out the investment thesis. 25% of my days goes around fighting some fires in one portfolio company or the other. But every day has looked the same. What keeps on changing is the content of what you're doing. So one day you're fighting one type of fire, one day you're fighting some other type of fire, and one day you're meeting companies in a certain space, the other day you're meeting companies in some other space. So but that's broadly what the job is. It's not very exciting.
Right. And interacting with a bunch of founders who are building something, and possibly to a large successful extent. So are there any specific traits that you see in all successful founders out there? I mean, I understand every company is different and every industry is different. So skill sets might vary, but yeah.
Look, I think people who, yeah, like one thing I love is that people who actually build great outcomes never think incrementally. They think very, very radically and they think exponentially. So, so they have a very well articulated, well thought out, specific point of view of what the world is going to look like 10 years down the line. And then they try to build towards that world, right? Some part of that world they try to solve towards. Or on the other side, they feel very strongly that some things will need to change and let me disrupt that more than anything else. So I think I think thinking at a grand scale with a very disruptive exponential mindset, I think that I would say is a one very standout trait. You would never hear that type of founder talking about, oh, it's a $1 trillion market and I'm happy to take like 0.1% of that. Right? They're willing to disrupt it fundamentally, and they're willing to take large risks and huge bets. I think that is really what is exciting about someone. Second is that they have a very specific point of view on how they want to structure things internally so that externally they achieve the outcomes that they want to. So how they think about hiring, how they think about organization structures, how they think about culture, right? Stuff like that. That really differentiates a very good founder from a mediocre founder. So I would say these two things: that how do you think exponentially rather than incrementally, and how do you set up yourself internally so that you can set yourself up well externally. I think these are the two, I would say, key things.
Awesome. I think that's it from our side. Thank you so much for joining in today, Tushar. One last thing before we end. Akul wrote "do epic shit" in the chat because he was referring to Ankur Warikoo's self-help book. So
Yeah.
that's the context that he was trying to
Okay.
provide.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, stay away from the dude. Both Akul as well as Varik.
Understood. Point taken. Thank you so much, Tushar. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And I think if you have any doubts, we'll keep on, reaching out to you further.
Yeah, sounds like a plan, guys. Cheers. I am
Thank you so
available
much.
on Twitter. That's where I'm most active at. Let me just put my Twitter handle here in case someone wants to reach me. Or just find me. It's fine. It's Tushar Behl 0x because I have now become a Web3 boy. So yeah. So anyway, guys, Twitter is the best place to reach me.
And thank you everyone else for tuning in. Yeah, please follow us to stay up to date with other sessions. And thank you so much, Tushar, for your time today.
Cheers, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.